Hello, this is Kate and welcome to the Ordinary Earth Song. I hope you're all well. It's quite warm over in the UK right now. Not enjoying it too much. Don't do well in the heat. Having multiple sclerosis. It does not work well with having a hot day. Believe me. I'm trying to do this as early as possible because it's going to get hot later. Anyway, you don't need to know that. Anyway, so yeah, we've been talking about 0 point consciousness in the last few videos because it feels like a subject that is in my field of consciousness at the moment. I'm very aware of it right now, and I think that's not a bad thing. But I had this image that came through, so anyone that hasn't seen the other videos will probably need to watch them first. So it's 0 point consciousness, 0.2 and 0.3. I got lazy with the naming convention, so I'm gonna probably fix that, I guess, because it doesn't give much away, right? Anyway, so this one is a kind of follow-up, and it's to do with this image that I got the other day, which was, right, so you have the spiral. I've got the spiral, and then we go into, so we're born, we're young, we learn, we come into a place where we start cycling around, growing, learning, and then we get fixed on certain things, and we start spiraling in what appears to be more of a cyclical way, and then we might start growing again, and then we go back into a cycle. 0 point consciousness is constantly pinging back and forth because it's looking through these as lenses of who we are and reflections back. And as we look out and we reflect back to 0 point consciousness, it creates what we expect to see, or what we think is true about ourselves and the world around us. Obviously other people can come in and affect that and change things and kick you out of the cycle, because this becomes a very comfortable place to exist in. It becomes a very comfortable existence because we become very sure of who we are, very settled, very calm, very, this is my path, this is who I am. And these cycles are tight now because a cycle doesn't have to be a year long, it doesn't have to be, it could be a week, it could be a day. We could live every day the same way every day, because those are the things we do, those are the things we're comfortable with. And this is what's happening, bouncing back and forth, creating. 0 point consciousness is constantly creating what we expect to see at any point in our lives. We create shadows, hiding certain aspects of ourselves so that the lens no longer looks through to this point. It only creates from this point onwards, and so on and so forth. But the image I got through was some wasting paper here, but I've had this pad for absolutely years, and I've never really properly used it, so I think this is a good use of this pad. So the image that came through was, so say you've had your cycles, right, and then all of a sudden you get kicked out of the cycle by something. You get kicked out, and you start. It could anything can kick you out of a cycle. A cycle is where you're comfortable. It's where you're living your day to day. You've got your weekly expectations. You always have fish and chips on a Friday. You always do this activity on a Thursday. You always do this thing on a Wednesday. At Halloween, you have to do apple bobbing, otherwise, the world will collapse. Those are the kinds of cycles. It's the fixed aspects of self. But something comes along and it goes, nah, you know what? It's not really. Maybe there's something more. Maybe you could do something different on a Friday. Maybe on Halloween you don't have to do apple bobbing. So anyway, it kicks you out and it makes you realise, and this is just a hypothetical, but I think this has happened to a lot of people. I know it's happened to me a few times. Something comes along and it kicks you out of a cycle that you've been in for a while, and in my case, the cycle was negative thinking, negative thoughts about myself. It was all about myself. Very self-deprecating, low self-worth, a lot of self-loathing, and and all learnt behaviours, shame and all that stuff, which I think quite a lot of people have experienced. But it created massive amounts of shadow and doubt and fear and uncertainty. And I was living in a cycle of kind of just trying to hide and survive and not be seen and not noticed. But there was something in my heart that was telling me there was something more, I was capable of more, and I was never really able to believe that. Anyway, something came along, not a very pleasant experience, and it shone a light on it, and it went, see this thing that's happened? You didn't deserve that. Anyway, it kicked me out of this thinking, this spiral, and it kicked me back into another spiral of even worse self-loathing. And it took me back. Anyway, so it can kick you out and bring you back in again, but then something else will come along and it will kick you back out again. We've talked about this kick out again, and it's like the dark night of the soul. It's something comes along, kicks you out of your normal way of thinking, your normal identity, the thing you've held on to for such a long time, and it goes, duh. It goes, enough of that. Or it goes, yeah, that's true, you are actually, that is really, really very true about you, isn't it? And then you spiral back down and get into depths of depression. I was kicked out 3 times. 3 times I was kicked out, and it took, actually, I'd say the 3rd time I got kicked out, and I got to a point where I was meditating a lot, and I was following someone called Adi Ashante. I wasn't following him. I read some of his books, and he opened up a lot of principles around just becoming aware of yourself. I did that. This was years ago. This was a very long time ago. And then once I'd done that, and I got to the point of, oh right, yeah, I get it now. We're all connected. Everything's connected, and I got this real sort of sense of connection. And I was like, oh, this is lovely. And I got to that point, and I experienced this euphoric. Oh, I can't get the lid off this pen. I can't get the lid off this pen. I'm not supposed to use it, I guess. Okay, I'll use the pink one. There's this euphoric meditation state where, my goodness, look at this. I want the pink pen, please. Oh, there's another one here. This euphoric meditative state where I was all of a sudden brought into this different level of awareness. It didn't last long, so I would just keep spiraling. But because I was learning, I was spiraling outwards. I wasn't cycling around. It was a fairly tight cycle because I was still learning, and I couldn't repeat that euphoric sense of being connected too often. It only happened every now and then. But this is the image I got the other day. And what happened with the Adi Ashanti thing was I got to a point where I was like, okay, so I know this stuff now, we're all connected. And I was like, that doesn't help me in my everyday life. So what? What's there? I got to a massive so what moment. And then I just sort of ended up, I think I kind of ended up going backwards, or just settling for a kind of medium between normal, everyday, what I considered normal, everyday life, and kind of just accepting the fact that we're all connected and that we're all kind of God and, you know, all the wonderful spiritual stuff. It just sort of became, yeah, that's true. I'm like, I believe in that. That's good. That's my everyday. That's I'm getting on with life. We're all connected. Great. And then something came along. Hang on, my cat's mithering me. She wants biscuits. Here you go, Bubba. And something happened about 2 years ago, and I was just like, hang on a sec. Ooh, mind expansion. Because it wasn't just about, it no longer was just about everything being connected. Because I don't know about you, but when I got to that point, I had no other context, nothing else to think about or do with that information. So therefore there was nothing to do with that information other than I could have become a monk, I guess. I wasn't going to do that. But about 2.5 years ago, I started asking questions and exploring things because YouTube exists, and there's a lot on YouTube, and it's mind-opening, mind-expanding stuff, things that actually I never would have thought about before started coming in, and they created this rainbow path for me. And that's why I kind of want this green pen, because I need a rainbow. Here we go. Thank you. It's not going to be a proper rainbow because I've only got pink, blue and purple and green. Okay, but it's going to be a good enough rainbow. It started creating this rainbow path, and this rainbow path consisted of intuition, and so I started learning about intuition, psychic abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, all the clairs opened me up. And then I had ghosts, demons, and then I'm going to use the blue. I'm going to use the blue again, but we're going to pretend it's not, the same as down here. Right, and I say demons because what happened with that was, I was like, so the idea of demons to me is ridiculous. I don't believe demons exist as in they are actual conscious entities. I think they are thought forms, and they are tulpas or egregores. They are created by human intention, belief systems, pain, and they're created in places where there's a lot of traumatic memory, and people go to those places with those memories, or they have an imagination of those memories, and they take that energy with them. And as they do, they hear legends of these demons or whatever they are, they put that energy into those things and they become real. Because that's a whole thing that we'll probably talk about another time. But anyway, but this is what happened. I started opening up to all these possibilities, psychic ability, which was something I had never really seriously considered to be a real thing before. Sorry, Bubba, you need to... heard that little plaintive meow. That was Cleopatra. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. She doesn't care. She's eating her biscuits. So yeah, it opened up this world of different thinking, and I started expanding. But it was always just a little bit wobbly, because I wasn't always like 100% on board with everything. So I was not skeptical, it's open, but I was also very kind of like, okay, well, I need some kind of proof that this is true. And then I found pendulum. Pendulum really opened my eyes, because it was like, what's making this work? What's making this move? And then it was spirit guides, and we moved on to angels. And I was like, well, I don't believe in demons, so why would I believe in angels? And the answer came back from guides. Angels are not thought forms. Angels are a lens, and I realised this just recently after doing all this work with the spiral. Angels are a lens that we see 0 point consciousness through, and allows us to communicate with 0 point consciousness on a level that we can accept and understand. So I'll explain this. 0 point consciousness is here, is me. It's creating me at all times, and I'm looking at the world through the lenses of me. Looking at the world, and it's reflecting back at me. And this is how I understand the world. I understand the world through the lenses of me. And as I'm expanding, as I'm changing, as I'm learning, my lenses, this is me, reflect back 0 point consciousness. And at this point, I'm thinking about fairies and angels. And at this point, I'm thinking about dragons. And over here, I'm thinking about aliens. And over here, I'm thinking about clairvoyance. And so on and so forth. So these are the lenses I'm focusing on to understand some new aspects of myself and the world around me. And that's reflecting back through all these layers of self that I once held as true. And all these layers of self have specific ways of interpreting and understanding the world. And they need to have language that they can relate to. So I'm exploring something completely different up here. But I've also got all these layers of self. How do I explain this new concept, or get the information that's going to help this part of me understand to the point where it becomes real, really real, tangible? So up here it's a belief system, and down here it's can you explain what that is and what that feels like, what that looks like, how that works? So what the brain is doing, it's going, how does that work? And what does that mean? Can you do that? Do other people do that? How do you know when you're doing it? How do you know you're not just making it up as you're going along? How do you know that that's a fairy? How do you know this? How do you know that? It's so, thought systems. So you get something like an angel, who is also 0 point consciousness. It's in here. So this is just coming through right now. We got the angel, 0 point consciousness, has a message for us right now. And the message is, here's some clarity on what angels are. Okay, so we're getting this message. This is some clarity on what angels are. 0 point consciousness with the ability to seem like we are communicating with a separate entity. So 0 point consciousness with the lens of what we're currently exploring. What we're currently exploring is angels. So the angel lens is applied to 0 point consciousness. And then we're able to talk to, get information from, and wisdom from, and guidance from this entity now, because we have something that we can relate to. It's still 0 point consciousness, but because the lens of an angel has been put onto it, and we've been studying angels, and we're meditating on angels, and we're looking for an angel guide, that's what comes through. The lens of an angel guide. And it's a very real lens, and it's a very real entity, because it's 0 point consciousness. It's created it. And this consciousness communicates to everybody in this way. It could be, doesn't have to be an angel. You might be concentrating on, let's say, a loved one who had passed away. The lens of your loved one still exists because they existed. They had a life. They had their own spiral. That lens still existed. So 0 point consciousness was them. They were 0 point consciousness. And therefore, they can bring that lens forward, that essence of self, to talk to you, because you will relate to it. You have an ability to relate to that lens because that's what you used to do in life. So if you're kicked out of your cycle of behaviour, and then you start looking for something, your world can change drastically, because you can find points of meditation where you can connect. But then YouTube has provided this opportunity to really explore all these other possibilities. And as you explore these other possibilities, you might find you are talking to guides or spirits, whatever. And that's 0 point consciousness with a lens on. A lens that tells you, this is who I am. But you'll find that the guidance is the same. Love yourself. You're here to experience life, etc., etc., etc. Doesn't matter who's saying it or what lens you're looking through to communicate with 0 point consciousness. You're communicating with 0 point consciousness through a layer of you and a layer of them that they've put on to make themselves compatible with you at that point in time. It helps you listen, it helps you hear what they're saying, it helps you connect. And weirdly enough, we're actually doing that with physical beings as well, all the time. So I use my mum as an analogy in the last reading, in the last video. She is also 0 point consciousness through a lens. It's no different, other than I can touch her. I can touch her. Her lens is dense, because I'm dense. We're at the same frequency. 0 point consciousness is creating the frequency that we exist in. The frequency of an angel or a guide or a loved one or a goddess or whatever is different, because it's higher. We can't touch them with a different frequency. It could be different dimension, I don't know. But it's all 0 point consciousness. It's all the same thing. So that's one thing that came through. The other thing that came through is this image. So I'm going to draw a spiral. It's going to be tighter than the other one. So this is what came through. So say we're meditating, we create a gap in our spiral. Whilst we're meditating, in that gap, this is where we get the clearest connection with 0 point consciousness, because we're not currently looking through a lens of self. We're looking through, if we get to that point of I am, if we look, and that's the clearest lens, and when we put everything else aside, if we can do that, we're looking through a lens of just I am. That's the essence of 0 point consciousness. So if we get to that point of I am, we create a gap in our spiral, and that gap will be minute to begin with, absolutely minute to begin with. But as we spiral around and we carry on creating the gaps, so say we made a gap there and a gap there or whatever, and we're making gaps by meditating, by being I am, the more we do that, the bigger the gap will become. And the more able we are to expand our knowledge of, and our understanding of, and the experience of I am. And you'll see it gets bigger. It gets bigger and bigger every time. Every time we pass around, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. See if I scroll down. And then we start creating other gaps, and then allows us to more gaps, and we become able to function, because the gaps become so big. Eventually it becomes really normal to have that time of, in our own understanding of self, I am, I am, I am. And all this other stuff, everyday life, still happens, doesn't go away. But because we have these moments, these increasingly larger, longer moments of I am, awareness of 0 point consciousness, awareness of who we're talking to, awareness of everybody and everything around us, awareness of all the I amness in the world. I am consciousness. I am, therefore I think, therefore I am. We will find that. We will find that. Regardless of how wonderful this feels and how much you want to stay in that state, actually, it's quite fun. It's really fun to function in the world with a sense of I am. I've been doing it most of the week, and it's amazing, because you're like, wow, you see things from a completely different kind of point of view of, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's all okay. It's you'll find that you want to work, you want to help people out, you want to do the things that you would do, because you don't become like a jellyfish, or someone who's completely incapable of functioning in the world. You just become someone who is more aware, more connected, more able to empathise and see other people's points of view and perspectives, and just more fundamentally capable of being a whole person more of the time. Now, I am not saying that I 100% achieved being the I am aware all the time, because that's difficult, and first week of trying, so I'm not going to say that there was perfection there. I don't even know what perfection would look like, in all honesty. I have no idea, actually. It'd be like someone like Eckhart Tolle or Adyashanti, or someone who's had this major awakening kind of moment in their lives. But I don't think even they would be able to say that they were perfect. Perfection is just being aware of I am, in all honesty, allowing that to grow, allowing these windows of I amness to expand in your life, because as they expand, you'll probably find that you can let go of certain things a lot easier. And I won't tell you why, because you'll figure that out. But allow the I am to expand, and over time it will become easier and longer. The first time I did an I am meditation, as I say, it was a few years ago now, and it didn't last long. It must have been at least 5 or 10 seconds, if that. It was a real kind of, oh my goodness, it was amazing, and then it was gone, faded, just a memory. And that happened a few times. But it wasn't until I started really exploring all these other possibilities, all these other ways of thinking, all this kind of like ghosts and fairies and angels and dragons and aliens, and there's all this belief in things I would never have considered as worthy of spending time on, let alone believing in. But I can see how, I can see why, and I can understand what it is now. I'm absolutely, I've got a black dragon. He's a spirit guide, and I love him. I had a guardian angel. I realised I had a guardian angel. I met an ancestor, one of my ancestors. I've spoken with my nan, who died years ago. I've spoken with my friend who died from COVID. I've spoken to Mother Earth. I had the Tree of Life following me for 3 days. Yeah, so it's been a real. This has been in the last 2 years. This has been a real journey of discovery, and it can be confusing. I always saw it as a journey of discovery, a journey of open-minded kind of exploration. I did the thing that people talk about all the time. I took what resonates and I left the rest. I didn't leave it completely. I left it to one side. I said, well, I might come back to that at some point. You never know. Once I understand more about all this, I might come back and just see what that's all about. But this journey of exploration, where I didn't get kicked out this time. I chose to explore this. I was curious. My curiosity took me on this path. This wasn't a dark night of the soul that took me on this journey like other times. I'd cycled around for a little while just believing that everything was connected and just getting on with my day-to-day life. Life wasn't particularly satisfying or anything, but it was just what it was. And then I just got curious, mainly about ghosts, and that took me on this journey. And every step of the way I've learned, I've learned, I've developed, I've changed. And every time I've done that, the lens that I've been looking through has altered with me. And as it's altered with me, the frequencies of my lens have changed, and I've been able to interact with other elements of 0 point consciousness who's been able to give me guidance, understanding, awareness of, and has pointed me in the directions of where I can get guidance elsewhere as well, like tarot readings, for example, on YouTube. I've been pointed to some tarot readers, and I always ask whether or not a reading is for me before I go into it. And if it is, I'll ask, is it 1, 2 or 3? And I get told which one to watch, so I'll watch that one. And it's always 0 point consciousness giving me that guidance, because I'm 0 point consciousness as well. So are you. We're all interacting through these lenses so that we could help, we could understand, we could interact with something that we are familiar with, or that we can ask questions to. So if we believe, or if we're interacting with an angel, for example, and we're asking that angel questions, can you explain this? What's going to happen if I do that? There's people ask questions using pendulums on YouTube, and they sometimes get an angel come through, or Merlin, or Lilith, or loads of different entities coming through, gods and goddesses as well. They come through and they answer questions. They're giving guidance, but they're giving it through the lens of who it is they are at that point in time. They've said they're Lilith. They're answering the questions using the lens of Lilith. Because that is the compatibility at that point between those two. This person is looking for answers. This entity's lens can give those answers. 0 point consciousness still. You've got to bear in mind. I've just been told, bear in mind there is no such thing as ultimate truth. Bear in mind there's no such thing as ultimate truth. Anyway, I find this absolutely fascinating, because for me, it clarifies a lot of things and it helps me understand. And I wasn't confused so much as just constantly questioning, constantly asking, so what is that? I need clarity on what these things are. And I feel like this is one step towards getting that clarity. And I hope that you get something out of this as well. So we'll end this here. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, I don't know what the next one will be about, but we will find out. So I'll see you later. Bye.